Hi, everybody. In this video, we are going to cover the physiognomy of the mouth. Now, some characteristics of the mouth. It is asymmetrical. Uh, some of the ways that it's asymmetrical. The inferior mucous membrane tends to be thicker than the superior mucous membrane. Now, when they say thicker, they mean from the bottom to the top. Is that always the case? No. Sometimes they're the same thickness. Sometimes the upper lip is actually thicker. But by and large, the inferior mucous membrane, the red part of the mouth, is thicker than the superior mucous membrane. And inevitably, most people's lips are a little bit off kilter. So one end of the line of lip closure, tends to be slightly inferior to the other one. Again, usually that's not always the case. Again, you can see in this picture that this side is just a little bit lower than that side. So there's always a little bit of a quirk there. Now, in natural repose, so in natural repose meaning as if the person was sleeping, that's what repose means. The upper and lower teeth are slightly parted. That's important. Remember that, because when you close the mouth, when you retrieve the mandible, you should not close it to the point where the teeth touch. You should close it to the point where the lips abut. They have light contact. The mucous membranes have light contact. It is not to the point where the teeth touch. If you do that, then the person looks like they have a clenched jaw, and that's not good. They look angry. Also, if the person has no teeth present, the mandible tends to be thrust a little higher. And so you have to make sure that when you close the mandible, you close it just enough so that it still looks as if there are teeth. The easiest way to do that is as you are closing the mouth, you put a mouth former in. The mouth former kind of shows you where to stop so that you don't close the jaw too much and make it look like the lower jaw is trying to eat the rest of the face. Now, looking parts of the mouth. We're going to start with the mucous membranes. The mucous membranes are the red parts of your lip, so that's what everybody thinks of as the lip. Now, normally the superior mucous membrane lies slightly anterior to the inferior mucous membrane. Again, that's because the norm of the human mouth is that you have a slight overbite. Their margins between the mucous membranes and integumentary lips are irregular. That's one of the reasons why when we say that when you put on lip color on a person, you should never line the lips, because when you line the lips, you make kind of a regular border in between the mucous membrane and the integumentary lip, the skin part of the lip, and that's not normal. It looks fake. Also, the color of the mucous membranes actually varies. The It can vary from the inside of the lip to the outside of the lip, usually does. Also, it usually varies within the lip itself. Natural lip color is not one solid color. And where a lot of people screw up the color of the mucous membrane is it's because they don't add enough brown to it. It's too much red, and so it looks fake. Now, we talk a lot about retrieving the mandible, closing the mouth, but we also need to talk about setting the lips properly. Now, to be able to set the lips properly, you have to find what's called the weather line. The weather line is the line of color difference on each mucous membrane. It differentiates the outside of the mucous membrane to the inside of the mucous membrane, because the outside of the mucous membrane is going to have been weathered through sunlight, through air exposure, whatever, but that's going to make a difference between the inside and outside. You have to make sure that the lips meet at the weather line. The weather line is also important if you plan on gluing the lips shut. So if you glue the lips shut, you should be applying that glue just behind the weather line, so that when you put the lips together, they will be sealed at the weather line. Okay? Otherwise, you end up making their lips kind of turn under and they don't have enough lip. So the weather line is an important part of the mucous membrane to find. So past the mucous membranes are the integumentary lips. You have a superior and an inferior portion. So that's just the skin part of the lip. Again, we don't necessarily consider those to be lips, but they are. Now, there's also the medial lobe, which is actually part of the mucous membrane. It's that medial dipping fullness of the superior mucous membrane. It's where the mucous membrane kind of fuses with the philtrum. The philtrum is that little divot that's above the medial lobe here, in between your mucous membrane and your columna nasi. That's the philtrum. Right? Not all medial lobes will be very pronounced. Some will be very muted. So it's, again, kind of important to look at your subject to see if they have a full medial lobe or a very minor medial lobe. On the mucous membrane, we also have the line of lip closure. That's just where the mucous membranes connect. Now, technically, they say when the lips come together, it's going to form something called a hunter's bow. It's 5 arcs of the line of lip closure. So how it goes is one arc here, 2, 3, 4, 5. So again, it kind of forms a bow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, is everybody's mouth going to form a hunter's bow? No. Some people's lips are very thin and they don't really form a hunter's bow. But it's something you have to kind of watch. When the weather lines hit properly and the lips gently abut, that should form somewhat of a hunter's bow. A lot of that's going to be dependent upon that medial lobe being full or not also. So those are the main parts of the mouth. Now we're going to look at associated facial markings. Again, most of these are going to be a sulcus of some kind, maybe an eminence. It just kind of depends. The first one is the philtrum. The philtrum is that shallow vertical groove running from the columna nasi to the superior mucous membrane. It runs down into the medial lobe. This is a natural facial marking. It's caused by 2 bands of the orbicularis oris, the sphincter muscle of the mouth, that originate at the septum and then come down. Everybody has one. Some people have deeper philtrums than others, but everybody's going to have a philtrum. And you have to pay special attention to natural facial markings, because if they're natural and everybody has one, that means you have to have one on your wax head. Next is the labiomental sulcus. The labiomental sulcus is a little depression. It's a sulcus. It's kind of a wrinkle, or it's actually a depression when you're born and it turns into a wrinkle as you get older. But it's where the inferior integumentary lip, meets the top of the chin. Again, everybody's born with it. Over time, it may actually create a wrinkle there. It is the kind of fleshy product of the incisive fossa, which is the kind of dip in between the inferior alveolar processes and your mental eminence. Next is the angulus oris eminence. That's an oblique eminence at the lateral ends of the line of lip closure. They kind of begin on the upper mucous membrane, or upper integumentary lip, I should say, and then kind of drop down. This is a natural facial marking. It's caused by all of those muscles inserting into the angle of the mouth, and it's about a ½ an inch roughly wide in between the corner of the mouth and the nasolabial sulcus, which we saw last time. So again, this is something that everybody has, and oftentimes mouths look funny because someone's been in the hospital for too long, and if they've been laying on their back, gravity will actually stretch the mouth out and get rid of those angulus oris eminences. And so the mouth will look weird. You have to recreate that, whether that's through putting cotton in the mouth or putty or hypodermic feature building. You have to recreate those angulus oris eminences. Now, lying medial to these angulus oris eminences are the angulus oris sulcus. It's a small groove in the angulus oris eminence at the juncture with the end of the line of lip closure. It's right here. It's those little lines, okay? And they start at the line of lip closure and they move inferior. They don't go up usually. They just tend to go down. Now, why that gets caused, it's a natural facial marking. Everybody has it. You'd see it on a baby. And it's because the natural formation of your jaw is that your maxilla lies just slightly anterior to your mandible. And so it causes that little crease. Now, it's pretty minor in most people, young people anyway. As you get older, it would become more and more of a wrinkle. Now, people with an underbite, let's say, a mandibular prognathism, they wouldn't have an angulus oris sulcus because their lower jaw is sticking too far out. Next up are the vertical lines. The vertical lines are the little vertical tracings on the mucous membranes. You'd see them really heavily in people that have really chapped lips, and you see those lines going up and down. But they are a natural facial marking. Everybody has them. This is one of the reasons these vertical lines are the reason why when you apply lip color to a person, that you go from the line of lip closure out. You don't go side to side, and that's kind of a difference between women when they put on ornamental makeup. Ornamental lipstick, they tend to go from the middle out laterally. You don't want to do that. You want to start from the line of lip closure, get a little pointer here, line of lip closure out. Because especially if you've waxed the lips, by doing that, you actually recreate these vertical lines, which is a natural facial marking. Now, an acquired facial marking would be the labial sulci. These are furrows extending vertically from the mucous membranes onto the integumentary lips. So these are not natural. These are things that you acquire over time. You tend to see them mostly in smokers because to smoke, you purse your lips, and pursing your lips creates these labial sulci. So not everybody would have these, but if they do have them, you have to recreate them. This also kind of creates some problems when you have to recreate a mouth that might have been damaged. You can't use lip wax because lip wax is pink usually. You'd have to use what's called a neutral wax. Neutral is yellowish in color so that you can cosmetize it properly. So that finishes it up for all of the parts of the mouth. Here's a little review. So number one is that dipping concavity between the medial lobe and the columna nasi. That's called the philtrum. Number two would be the skin part of the lip. That's the integumentary lip. Number three is the dipping fullness in the superior mucous membrane. That's the medial lobe. Number four would be the actual mucous membrane itself, so the red part of the lip. Number five are where the lips abut. That's called the line of lip closure. Again, it's got 5 arcs, a hunter's bow. Number six is the eminence at the lateral corners of the mouth. That's the angulus oris eminence caused by the muscle insertions. Number seven is the tracings, up and down tracings, vertical tracings on the lips. Those are called the vertical lines. Number 8 is the little sulcus caused by the overbite of your mouth. That's called the angulus oris sulcus. Number 9 would be the sulci that can move from your mucous membranes down onto your integumentary lip, usually with age and or smoking. That's called the labial sulci. And then number 10 is the sulcus in between your inferior integumentary lip and your chin. That is the labial mental sulcus. All right, so that finishes it up for the mouth. The next time we are going to go over the parts of the eye.